Hello, my name is Bruce Kogan. I'm the director, along with Sandra Navalli, of the Sanford C. Bernstein and Company Center for Leadership and Ethics. So we actually say the full name, and it's a center which was started in honor of Sanford Bernstein, now often member through Bernstein Alliance. This evening is an event which we hold every year. It is sponsored by the very kindness of the Klion family in memory of Stanley Klion, who was an executive of residence here for some time. He's at KPMG and was always very much involved in the meaning of ethics for education and for what it means in business as well. Tonight we're very happy to have two people with us from Campbell Soup. It's not easy to get two top people here, and we're delighted to have them both. Denise Morrison, who is the top executive for Campbell Soup, and Oran Kaden, who is general counsel. So we get a chance to hear a little bit about the dynamics back and forth. My job is just to pose a few questions to start off with, warm things up, and then we will turn it over to you for some questions. And when things get too hot, we will have some water and drinks after. So why don't we begin by turning to you, Denise, may call you Denise, and discuss some of the issues which confront a firm like yours. And Campbell Soup, everyone knows, but if you want to say anything about Campbell Soup, you should take that opportunity, because most people know it from childhood and up, and if they don't, they aspire to collect those Warhol pictures of Campbell Soup. But currently, there is obviously a lot of things in the news for a long time now about the pressures on corporate decision making, particularly top leadership. The quarter-to-quarter reporting has always been there, and we always have a discussion with students who come up and say, how does a company find the moral space to actually make a statement for what it believes in and what it stands for? So I'm curious if you can start off with us to talk about that particular issue.
It is a tension between accomplishing the short-term deliverables, but making sure you stay true to the real job of creating long-term shareholder value. And the way that we've done it at Campbell's is we do have a strategy that the management team has worked with the board to create a longer-term roadmap to that, building that shareholder value. And the strategy is comprised of what we call a dual mandate of strengthening the core business and then expanding into faster-growing spaces. And the faster-growing spaces that we're about are packaged fresh, and we've recently bought Bolthouse Farms, which is a fresh carrot, super premium beverage and salad dressing business. Expanding availability, we're largely concentrated in grocery and mass merchandiser, so expanding to multiple channels where consumers shop. The disruptive innovation. So in a business like ours, you have core business that you do sustaining innovation, new line extensions and flavors, but it's also important to create new-to-the-world experiences and products and packaging for consumers, like our new Campbell dinner sauces, and expansion into international emerging markets with a focus for us on Latin America and Asia. So we believe that in addition to strengthening our core business and expanding into those fast-growing spaces, we'll be delighting our core consumers, who are baby boomers, and then attracting the next generation of consumers, millennials, to Campbell's, but recognizing that we have to provide different offerings to do that. So we navigated that whole strategy and construct with our board of directors, which is really a longer-term play. However, as CEO, we have not only the 3-year strategic plan, we have the longer view, and we also have an annual operating plan, which we chop into 4 quarters, and there are certain deliverables that we have to report on every quarter. And so what I've also done externally is to make sure that the investor community and the analysts really understand our story and the fact that we are pursuing long-term shareholder value. We've announced longer-term targets that we are pursuing. And so each quarter, I update them on that, where we are in that journey, what's working, what's not, what are we doing about it. And so they have the toggle, so to speak, between the longer term and the shorter term. And so keeping that tension and balance is really what it's all about. But I believe that we've been able to navigate that pretty well with the moral space and the ethical approach to making sure we're doing the job that we need to do for the shareholders.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned to me, because you've been at Campbell for some time now.
Yes, my 11 years now, yes.
And then you're currently sitting on some boards as well?
Yes, I was on the board of Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. When I became CEO, I did not stand for re-election on that board, so I could focus on this position because it was 24/7. I'm on the Campbell board, and I just went on the board of Metropolitan Life.
So you had a chance to see a little bit of the different operations of
yes,
boards and
I think it's very important. It really has given me perspective of what it's like to be on the other side of the table and be able to deal from there. And each board has a different culture. So there is a culture that's created at that table, and it's important to really understand it and be able to work with it.
Mm-hmm. There's a term which came up in our discussions, this is corporate citizenship, which is a term which is perhaps new for many of us, because it implies, citizenship always implies a certain amount of obligation on both parties. So what does it mean for Campbell?
I'm very passionate about corporate social responsibility. And, we're a 145-year-old company, and social responsibility has been in our DNA for that length of time. So it's not a new thing for us. But I fundamentally believe that a company can make a profit and make a difference. And we have a great senior executive by the name of David Stanga, who came to our company, what was it, about 6 years ago now, Ellen? Longer than that? Okay, well, this man has made an incredible difference. But where we focused our energies has been on a couple things. First of all, healthy communities. I mean, we're headquartered in Camden, New Jersey, and we are the tax base, we are the volunteers. We have made a commitment to reduce childhood obesity in Camden by 50% over the next 10 years. 40% of the kids in Camden are obese, and they don't have access to healthy food. They don't have any nutrition education and no physical fitness. So we are fixing that. We are working collaboratively with the mayor and Rutgers and Cooper Hospital on an amazing program to give those kids a chance and to make a difference and have an impact. That's one example. And wherever you go in the Campbell system, whether it's one of our plants or our headquarters for Pepperidge Farm in Norwalk, Connecticut, we are active and engaged in the communities that we live and work. And our people are really fired up about that. That's not something that they go begrudgingly. They're happy to do it. And it's kind of nice. The other place where we are really engaged with social responsibility is in the environment. And one example is at our Napoleon, Ohio soup plant, we have the largest solar field that literally is 60 acres, and it does 15% of our energy in the plant. And we did this as a collaborative partnership, and we never expected that we would save money doing it. I mean, it's nice when you do something positive for the environment, and then you get a benefit of saving money as well. And so, I would say that that we have a very, very robust approach and a very sincere approach to making a difference for our communities and being good citizens. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, and by the way, yes, we did expect to save money, or I wouldn't have signed the requisition. But I'm got to be hard-headed. But I think there are two things about corporate citizenship. I think that the principle that you are accountable for your impact on other people in the world applies as much to an entity as it does to an individual. It's the basic thing that your parents told you, and that is true for institutions. I also think, being hard-headed about it, that increasingly the consumers, particularly the new generations of consumers, care as much about what a company stands for as the appeal of its products. So there are very practical reasons for us to be mindful of the way the impact that our company makes is viewed in the world, just as a matter of business sense, because we're dealing with consumers who will judge us in that light, I think, increasingly with the passage of time, and are already doing so now. Similarly, our suppliers and our customers have increasing engagement with us on these issues as well.
Let's turn to this issue of the suppliers and the customers. Sometimes the term which is used is stakeholders, which is useful, but it's often contested as a word. Some people don't like using it, and also it varies a lot across companies. So when I say the word stakeholders to you, what does it mean? And is it a battle at all to put it out in front of the investors, in front of the corporation, and even to convince the outside community how serious you are about that?
Yeah, well, a company does have multiple stakeholders, and it starts with consumers, and consumers are not one size fits all anymore. Consumers, customers, analysts, the regulators, the science community, activists, NGOs, all of these stakeholders have a perspective on what it means to run your company. And they're not shy at times in expressing what that means. And the approach that we've taken is to recognize that you can't satisfy every one of them, and you can't be all things to all people. But it really is important to engage in a dialogue with them and keep that dialogue open so you're able to explain to them rationally why you're doing what you're doing and why it's important to do it that way. And I think that with that understanding comes respect, and respect is mutual. You can agree to disagree on things, and so that's pretty much how we have handled it.
On the Oran Kaden, who was actually on the faculty of the law school some time ago. I think you were also a trustee of the university, so which means that the faculty always have to obey, which we do anyhow. So the issue we mentioned, supply chains, was brought up. That's part of the stakeholders, I would imagine, or at least responsibility to them. And there's so much attention to that currently. So what exactly is the policy on Campbell's? How deep do you go through the layers of suppliers and verify their quality and security?
Yeah.
So the answer is it depends. We have a supplier sustainability policy, and we have a supplier standards policy, and they are published, and they express the expectations that we have with respect to our suppliers across a whole array of issues having to do with human rights and certainly sustainability practices and ethics and integrity and dealings with employees and many other things. As do most companies in our industry now, or at least many companies in our industry now. The converse of that is that everyone in the world wants us to do more with our suppliers, and understandably, whether it is use of pesticides, sustainable agriculture, sustainable seafood, the rainforests, palm oil. There's a lot of issues where there are many different groups out there who believe that we and others in our industry are in a position to influence practices way upstream, right, based upon our supplier policies and purchasing policies. And we talk about that a lot, and we engage in dialogue a lot. And as Denise just said, you can't be all things to all people. But I think that the point that she made, there was a time not all that long ago where the attitude of many companies would be that it's really not legitimate for people to have an opinion about the way you manage a company. And I think the big difference, as Denise just commented, is we know it's legitimate for many people and many groups to have many perspectives. We may not agree with them, but the importance of engaging in the dialogue, recognizing and explaining ourselves and explaining the decisions that we make is something that we do understand. And of course, one layer down, our customers increasingly have expressed expectations of us as the suppliers. So in terms of what we can demonstrate concerning sustainability practices and social welfare practices and so forth. So in that respect, it is a quota food chain.
I do think there is an area though of food safety that you have to have the highest integrity and the highest ethics. And so, we're constantly working on our procurement, et cetera, to make sure that the people we do business with have a Campbell standard, which is a very high standard for safety and quality. And so, and sometimes that's hard, but, we're relentless about that.
Before I ask a bit more about the General Counsel, your board has, I think, 15 members, like 4 from the family itself.
Right.
And that can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. We often teach the cases where things go wrong, but the plurality is things actually work out pretty well. But how does it matter for you?
Actually, we do have a 15-member board. There are 4 members of our board that are descendants of Dr. John Dorrance, who invented condensed soup. And that's Mary Alice Malone, Bennett Dorrance, Archie Van Buren, and Charlotte Weber. And I find these directors are, they've been an asset because they have a much longer view. They have an appreciation for this company and an emotion for this company that's pretty special. And I find that, what we did let's see, I'm going on my 4th year as CEO, August 1st. And so the past couple of years, and Ellen has been my right-hand partner in this, we have navigated a strategy to take the company in a different direction. And getting 15 board members aligned on that was an art and a science. And yet we took the subject matter over a period of board meetings when I did deep dives so that there was a clear understanding. There was back and forth challenges. It was very robust, very healthy. We didn't always agree on everything, but that was okay. Everybody really understood what we were doing, why we were doing it, where we were going, why we were going there, and what it would deliver. And I found that the family members were as active and engaged in that conversation as anybody else in that room. And so that's really all I ask for, is to make sure that the board of directors is, governing the company and letting myself and the management team manage the company. We share strategy, that's a shared responsibility, and that they are engaged and constructive. And so, and I can say that is the board experience I've had here.
The General Counsel, we're in a business school. You taught at the law school. And we were talking earlier about this, is kind of a bit of a gulf in cultures of the two schools, and probably in the 2 professions, and no doubt lawyers make lots of fun of the business school, and occasionally people even say discouraging things of law, though I personally have never heard anything. So this is your chance to tell us, what is it that General Counsel does with the corporation?
What does the General Counsel do? You mean the job description?
Right.
Okay.
Why don't you say what the General Counsel doesn't do?
Yeah, that would be shorter. So there's, I guess, there's really 3 buckets, I suppose, of my job. One is set the core responsibilities that I have as the chief legal officer of the company, which are probably familiar to many of you just conceptually, even if you don't cross the DMZ from the business school. I'm responsible for assuring that the company has capabilities and systems for protecting its rights and its assets, for complying with its legal and regulatory obligations, for providing, through myself and through the people who work with me, the resources, the advice, the support, the partnership that the businesses need to advance the business objectives. And there's a lot more where that came from, but that's kind of foundational. I have a whole host of responsibilities to the board, some of which are also fairly basic, that have to do with ensuring that our directors understand their legal responsibilities and public expectations of their role. And as you know, that's been a moving target in the last 10 to 15 years, because expectations of directors of public companies in terms of their understanding of the operations of the business, of the way risk is managed in the business, of the effectiveness of financial controls, of regulatory compliance, of 50 things. There's a lot of boxes to check now, and it's easy to get lost in that, by the way, because the larger accountability, I think, vis-a-vis the board, the one that has more dimension to it and is a little harder, is to help the directors and the CEO arrive at a common sense of what corporate governance is really intended to deliver for the company at this point in time. And that's a moving target too, right? Because governance needs to deliver different things to companies at different times in their evolution and when you have different leaders. So there's that. And there are all kinds of subparts to each of these things. I do oversee, in addition to the legal department and the Office of Corporate Secretary, the government affairs team and corporate responsibility and public affairs. So I and my colleagues who work with me sit kind of at the intersection of the company's interaction with many different groups that are in a position to have a big impact on our business. Not just the board of directors, but as Denise mentioned, a whole flotilla of regulatory and enforcement authorities and plaintiffs' lawyers and NGOs and just all of that. And a part of my job is helping my boss and the other senior executives could understand the perspectives and priorities of these folks in a way that is useful and meaningful to them. And then the third bucket is a kind of special relationship that I have with the senior executives, and particularly with Denise, which is it's a very special kind of a partnership. It's kind of the ultimate relationship of trust and confidence for those of you who are also going to law school. And it's I would say that at the highest level, my job is to help her see around corners, kind of, plan for what's coming before it arrives, sounding board, soulmate, but most important, I think, an independent perspective and objective judgment, to share only what I absolutely believe is my best judgment, whether or not she wants to hear it. So it's a kind of a high-risk job, but it works well, and
That's why we have contracts, though.
that's why. Not at Campbell, no employment contracts. But in any case, so there's a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm. The term which I heard also speaking to you was the term radical transparency, which kind of threw me for a second, because the word radical doesn't come up too often in the responsibilities of concerns of top management and council. So what is the history to this term, and what is the issues behind it?
Well, actually, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. So radical transparency is the name that has recently been given to the phenomenon. It's kind of regulation by disclosure, right? And if you look at it most cynically, which I'm not sure we should do, whether it has to do with state statutes that require you to disclose the efforts that you're making to ascertain the presence of slave labor in your supply chain, which is not all that unrealistic. For example, if you're a food company and you're buying chocolate from Africa, or the Iran-Syria statute, which requires us to make, under the SEC disclosures, to make all kinds of disclosures there with respect to activities of trading, or the conflict minerals rules, one piece of which were struck down, you may have noticed, by the Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit yesterday. But just one piece, that's all. And there's a lot of pressure on companies to disclose all kinds of information that they never had to disclose before. And it's really intended, if you look at it big picture, to shame boards and companies into caring about things that they may not have cared about before, and taking action to address it. And whether or not that is the best way to drive social change, I think remains to be seen. But it's a very important trend, and one that I think directors need to understand, because they need to understand what the impact on the company will be, both financially and reputationally.
Let me ask you one more question, and we'll open up to the floor, and maybe we'll come back to some of the other ones. I think everyone has the impression that you work well as a team, the two of you. And I hear a little bit about that from you on this. It's not to me obvious it has to work that way, because counsel is counsel, which can be giving advice which is important to be heard. Sometimes it could be advice about how things in the company have certain legal implications. So it really does, I guess the term used was confidence and trust, and you referred to the law students in the room. So maybe I can turn first to you, Denise, to say a word about that, and Alan, maybe you can come back and tell us a little bit about this confidence and trust issue, which we may not have heard too much about in the business school context. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm most fortunate because I see Ellen as a business partner. She really is a student of the business, and when she talked about the fact that she counsels not only me, but even other people on the management team, it's not just about the legal counsel, it's about the business. And that's really been a gift. It really has been. And I think that, when you're a CEO, the higher you go, the less people tell you the truth. They want to blow smoke in your face. They want to tell you what they think you want to hear. And there are CEOs who love that. I don't love that. I want to know the truth. I don't want to see the world with rose-colored glasses. I want to hear what's really happening. And so people like Ellen are not shy about getting in my face and telling me the truth. Like she said, whether I want to hear it or not. And we don't always agree on everything. But I do think we have enough mutual respect for each other's perspectives that we can take an issue, go at it with potentially those different perspectives, take a breather, come back, and make a judgment. But once we make the judgment, we execute. And more often than not, we're pretty accurate. And so that builds confidence over time. And when you're in a situation where you're changing a strategy of a company, you're bringing that company into new spaces with new challenges. More often than not, our conversations are, you're not going to believe this one. And I say that affectionately because there are some, really big things that we have had to navigate pretty skillfully and make sure that we're always doing the right things the right way. And so it's been, very, very, I'm very appreciative of the fact that I've had the partnership here and, the intellectual capacity that Ellen brings to this job is way beyond just being a lawyer. Again, it's been much more of a business partnership And she's a very good lawyer, too.
Thank you. So, how do I look at it? I look at it a couple of different ways. So I've been in the general counsel business since there were gas lights. Denise is my 8th CEO, right? So I've had old CEOs, new CEOs, tall CEOs, short CEOs, experienced CEOs, baby CEOs, and every one of them needs their own strategy, and you have to adapt yourself to the way that they need you to deal with them in order to be effective. Denise is one of the reasons why I take such pleasure in this particular role and have for years now is because when you have someone who combines a lot of guts, the sort of the courage to look at a company and say, we need to make changes, we're going to move forward, we're going to strike out in new directions, we have to bring a lot of people along, this is really going to be heavy lifting, we really need to be courageous and analytical and determined with very important human values, which is a very big deal, ladies and gentlemen, because there are many different kinds of CEOs in this world, and their human values are not all consistent. Okay, and an attitude towards leadership and towards engagement and enlistment. It's really a pleasure. And when you have the opportunity to work with someone like that in my job, it's really manna from heaven. So we have a good time, and I have to be. I'm not doing my job if I'm not very direct with Denise.
Which is not a problem.
It's not.
Great. First of all, I should tell you it's so wonderful to have both of you here, because I know how busy you are, so it's quite a thrill for us. It's probably a thrill for the audience to have both counsel and CEO together. So let's open it up to the audience to pose some questions. And maybe to make it fair, you can state who you are and whether you come from Columbia or elsewhere. Okay? So maybe I'll do this. You go.
Hi, Patrick Stadlofer. I'm a second-year student here at Columbia Business School. My question is about how you maintain authenticity, I guess, to your brands. Because we've seen a lot of rise of organic labeling, natural labeling, clean labels, more and more. And it seems that kind of is supplanting what a brand is to stand for, which is this is authentic, this is original, this is good. How do you see it as a threat in such a brand company as you, or do you see it as a chance to engage consumers in different ways? Kind of how do you see that trend evolving?
Well, I think, and we've given this very careful thought, we really believe in transparency with the consumer, and we believe that consumers have the right to know what's in their food. And so, and our brands have been around for many of them for a very long time, and so consumer trust is really important to us. And we do have a choice model in our brand platform. So for example, in our soup business, we have a line of healthy request soup, which is lower in sodium, lower in fat, and it meets the government and the American Heart Association standard for healthy. And so there's a choice that consumers can make. And we have 90 soups in that line, so someone could eat them every day for 3 months and have a different variety. We also acquired Bolthouse Farms, which got us into fresh carrots. We're neck and neck for, the top supplier in the United States for fresh carrots. We have super premium fresh beverages and salad dressings that are yogurt-based, 45 calories. And that's a beautiful company. And we just bought Plum Organic. So recognizing that millennial consumers who really care about organic food for their babies, we bought that business because that's the future generation of food that we're looking at very seriously. So I think it's when you run a food company, there's a real diverse portfolio. And I think the main thing, and we hear this and we check this and take a temperature with consumers all the time about, are we being authentic and are we being transparent? And for the most part, we get high marks on that.
45 calories?
Pardon?
45 calories?
In the salad
Yeah.
dressing, yeah. Oh,
That
they're
tastes good?
delicious.
Yeah?
Try the honey mustard.
Just give you an opportunity to plug that, that's all. So much, yes.
Yes.
And Steve, you name
I'm
it.
Genevieve Kinney, and I'm a first year student at business school. This might be a very slightly boring procedural question, but just going through all of your responsibilities and thinking about sort of the global scale of the business that you run, how do you have enough time in the day? And how do you, I mean, just thinking about how much you must have to read, and whether it be emails or documents or legal briefs, I mean, how do you focus on what to prioritize, and how do you actually execute on that every day?
I'll answer first and then Ellen can chime in, but it's 24/7. When you run a company, it literally is 24/7. That's not to say I don't take time off for my family. I mean, I have a great family, and I am able to put the pencil down and pay attention to my family. But when I signed up for this role, I knew it was going to be intense. I think what helps is I love to read, and I love to learn, and I'm still learning an awful lot. So I think that, coupled with probably an insane work ethic, gets me through it. But I think the other thing that's interesting about this role is just the sheer diversity of the issues and the opportunities that you get into. There's never a day that's typical, and so being able to be in a constant state of setting priorities and being agile about that has been a skill that I've had to really hone in on. So I don't know if you.
Well, it is 24/7. I think, though, that one of the things that you really get good at is triage. Over the years, I've built a team of people who are really good, who I really trust, whose standards are as crazy as mine, and that is a very good feeling. And you learn, what's sort of in the A pile, what's in the B pile, what's in the C pile, and what you stop everything for. And every day there are a couple, hopefully not every day, but frequently there are those things. You build a network of people whose judgment and capabilities you rely on. You learn to talk in shorthand, which we frequently do. So there's a lot captured in a short sentence, and you figure out a way. I mean, it's a really good point, because you have responsibilities that span the world, and you can't let anything break. And in retrospect, if something does break, I'm very mindful of the fact that we're all seeing this now. You can have a CEO who is dealing with, or senior executive, 500 issues, but if something breaks, that's the one that he or she should have been focusing on relentlessly. So you get it's easy to get a little paranoid, and I'm paranoid enough for both of us. So you just create safety nets, all different kinds of safety nets, so that stuff doesn't fall to the bottom. If one person misses it, another person's going to get it, and it's going to come back to you. So some of it is tricks of the trade that you build up, and some of it is just, working like a mad woman.
And I think that it's a good point. Having a talented team is essential. And, it's really important that you are very selfish about the standard you set on your management team, because it'll just take the company so much further if you've got capable people. And you can delegate.
Sasha, I think it's it. So please tell your name.
My name's Sasha Rubin. I'm also a second-year MBA. My question is, given your global supply chain, your strategy in Asia and Latin America, I'm curious what the biggest challenges you've faced have been in terms of compliance and governance and due diligence. But I imagine there have been challenges.
In Latin America, we just engaged in Mexico, we just engaged in 2 strategic alliances with two family businesses, one Umex and the other Conservas La Castaña. And what we've done there is recognize the fact that we had a small business and an older manufacturing facility. And in order to service our customers and get into not only the modern trade, but the general trade, that these alliances had the ability to provide us with a supply chain that really worked. And they're very high integrity companies. We've retained a commercial team in that country with marketing and R&D and consumer insights. So we're doing what we do best, and we're partnering with them in the supply chain. And that system seems to be working, although it's relatively a new partnership. And so we're hopeful for that. In Central America, we run more of an export model. And we haven't ventured into South America yet beyond exports. And although, you know, we have targeted South America as potential for external development, what we would be looking for is targets with the same kind of standards and ethics that we have. And so that would stand true for the supply chain as well.
You're right, that it's a very large undertaking, and it's a large undertaking for everybody who is involved in a US-based company and is looking to expand around the world, or to build businesses around the world. I think, what's the answer? A healthy respect for what you don't know. You know, starting with a recognition that business cultures and business practices are different in different parts of the world. A lot of education from other people who have been there before and have encountered issues and difficulties that you can learn from. A lot of local advice from people whose judgment and experience you trust. And a kind of doubling up of all of the efforts that you would make in other situations to try to do the very best that you can to compensate for issues that are different than the issues that you see in the business.
Hi, my name is Eugene, and I'm actually an alum. I graduated from Columbia with my JD MBA, so thank you so much for being here. My question is, you touched on the importance of human values in both your own philosophies and in the management team, and also recently the corporate social responsibility philosophy has evolved and companies treat it very differently. I'm curious what your thoughts are on just the notion of corporate social responsibility, and also how the company prioritizes it in its initiatives outside of the business.
We just finished some work around company purpose, and you know, we had spent the last couple of years really honing in on what we do and how we do it. So what we do in terms of the clear direction and the strategy, how we do it in terms of our values and our ethics. The higher order purpose gets to why we're doing what we're doing. And as part of that purpose, we really call out the importance of social responsibility. It's real food that matters for life's moments. And in the that matters, we literally call out the fact that the social responsibility is part of who we are, and the fact that it matters not only to our company, but it matters to our consumers as well. And I think that that's front and center for the whole organization. And it's not enough just to talk about it. It's really important that the tone is set at the top and that the management team in the senior levels walk that talk. And so, for example, a couple weeks ago, we did a Make a Difference week where the whole senior leadership team went into Camden and worked with the mayor and some school children and planted trees. That sounds like a little thing. There aren't any trees in Camden. So now there are 40 of them. And so, you know, having visible examples of why social responsibility is really important. I think it is part of who we are. And if you,
Well, I would emphasize too that CSR is only meaningful in a company, I think, if its distinction from corporate philanthropy is really understood, right? CSR for us is very much a business platform, and it is integrated in the business. It's not an extracurricular activity. We know, as we've said now a couple of times, that you can't be all things to all people. So we are not, trying to save the whales and so that we have a 4-platform CSR program that focuses on our customers and consumers, on environmental sustainability, on the quality of our workplace and our workplace practices, and our engagement in our communities. And we could have made 4 other choices, but a strategy is what you exclude as well as what you include. That's why it's a strategy. See, I didn't go to business school, but even I know that.
I was just thinking, both of you would be great.
So it is a business platform, and you need to think about it as a business platform and integrate it. And there are 1,000 ways that. So if for example, if you're in the garment industry and you use textiles that consume a very large percentage, let's say, of the world's water, you might have more of a focus on water conservation. You have to pick platforms that relate to your business. We're very long on agricultural sustainability because we do use a lot of water, but it's to grow carrots and tomatoes. So I think that having an identity that connects your business with the social platforms that are important to your business convinces everybody, you're not kidding around, and this is not a matter of donating to the ballet. And I think that is a very important idea for companies to internalize.
it's also a huge source of engagement for our people. And if you get highly engaged people and you can leverage that for higher performance, that's really good for the company. And when we recruit, it's amazing, the younger people who are interested in Campbell's are as much interested in what we stand for in the area of corporate social responsibility as our business. And we're happy because we can answer those questions for them. But we were initially amazed at how different the balance was between the two with this next generation coming out of school.
I would just add one more thing. Sustainable energy is a really good idea from a business standpoint. So, there are many good reasons to be thinking about these issues that are entirely grounded in the best interest of the share owners as well. I would just make that point.
Yes.
My name is Alan Pavlovich. I'm a second-year MBA student here at Columbia, and for full disclosure, I'm a plant manager for Milwaukee plant at Campbell Soup. So I'm very proud to see both of you here and visiting our school and talking to us today. One thing that you just mentioned recently that really struck the note for me was you were talking about high-performance organization. And I lived through Campbell's on multiple roles, starting from global supply chain down to more local now role in a Milwaukee facility. And I see one very distinct Campbell's culture that is strong, full of pride, and full of engagement. Also, over the course of the last 3.5 years that I've been with the company, I've seen a lot of strategic change, and I see the culture is changing, but engagement doesn't fall. How do you manage, how much of your time does it take to maintain that level of engagement on the employee side as well, and in launching this high-performance organization platform that we all are working very hard on today?
I think it's huge. And recognizing that it's not sufficient just to have high engagement. You have to have high engagement and high performance. And in the past, we measured employee engagement year after year, so we had a good baseline for that. But we weren't necessarily measuring how we were doing against the drivers of high performance. We now do that. And if you really believe this, if you have a highly engaged organization that's performing, that drives higher engagement, because people ultimately like to win. And yet we say winning is important, all with the highest integrity. And our people like that. I think they like to be a part of that. So I think that it's something that I spend a lot of time on, a lot of time. We go through a pretty enormous calibration of all of our talent, career pathing for them, making sure that we're giving them the training they need. I mean, I had a situation where the world of marketing, for example, is changing radically with digital. We retrained all our marketers in the last year on how to rethink that. And I really do believe that, you know, if you equip people with education and skill building, they'll be more engaged and then they'll perform better. And you get that upward spiral. And it's definitely apparent in our supply chain.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comments.
Good question. Yes, state your name.
Hi, my name is Roni. I'm a first year at the business school. I worked in financial services before school, where I think women made up about 20% at the senior level, and I'm going to consulting this summer. In the office I'm going to, women make up about 10% of the partners. And I was wondering, what are some things either you do at Campbell's, whether you're being very senior women, or what are some other things some other companies or other industries could be doing to better balance the ratio at the senior level?
Women.
Oh, okay. You know, it's interesting because I'm also on the board of Catalyst, which actually is a research nonprofit that, you know, tracks women's advancement and does research around it in corporate America. What we find is it's about 50-50 at the entry levels in companies, and yet as the pyramid narrows, the percentage also narrows. And I think there's something in that middle there that needs more work, more around the director and vice president levels, where women start leading people and start getting more P&L responsibility. So I think that you know, if I speak for Campbell's, we have Ellen on my team, Irene Britt as the president of Pepperidge Farm. So we have promoted and are fostering an environment where we're respecting diversity and trying to sponsor and mentor diverse candidates so that they can move through the pipeline. We have much more work to do though, and I won't kid you, it's not something that I feel that we're all the way there. We still have a lot more to do. So, I don't know if you want to. We have affinity groups. We've got programs, but you know, it's still going to be a lot more to get more women in senior ranks.
Well, I would just say a couple of things. There's a lot to talk about there, and that's not
Yeah.
today's agenda, but I would make two observations. One, I think you're right that there are meaningful differences in different sectors in the representation of women. I think that it is my impression that, particularly in the senior ranks, one sector that has done a particularly poor job is financial services, and there's lots of drivers for that. Ironically, when you get past some of the glittering names, Marissa and Sheryl Sandberg, so forth, another place that tends to be a wasteland for women is Silicon Valley, and which is interesting because everybody's young and hip, right? And I think it's not consistent. I think secondly, there are many sectors that have worked, that have really genuinely tried to focus on the reasons why women have not advanced in their organizations as much as they should have when you consider the talent and Denise's point about the entry. Some of it is structural, there's no doubt about it. We still, when you compare our country to other places in the world in terms of medical care and child care and all of the structural support in the environment, it's still a different story and a harder story. There are institutional constraints. There's not one single thing. The solution is going to be, in my personal opinion, a combination of structural changes that address some of the impediments for women to advance and an active will in terms of training and focus and support across the different sectors of the economy.
There's only 22 women running Fortune 500 companies, and one of them is my sister.
Which company is that?
Frontier Communications, Maggie Wilderwater.
Makes it a dynasty. Somebody got hands up, but why don't we take this two here and I'll come back. So first in red.
Hello,
it's,
I'm Kim Isaias. I'm a second-year student here at CBS. And I have a question. Since you're expanding, what are the main cultural challenges you faced? Your company is the American company by accident. And expanding to places like Asia and Latin America must be different culture-wise. What are the main things you faced?
I think, from a culture standpoint, when you're trying to drive an innovation agenda, one of the big things is you've got to give people permission to be more experimental and more agile. And that means they don't necessarily have to be 100% all the time. And so one of the big cultural shifts that we have had to implement at Campbell's is giving people permission to experiment and make mistakes and not feel like they'll get fired for failing. That the importance of learning from that failure and reapplying it. Small example, we introduced V8 V-Fusion plus T. It was a miserable failure. But what we learned from that enabled us to introduce V8 V-Fusion plus Energy, which was a wild success story. And if we hadn't had the experience with the T, we never would have gotten to what the consumer really wanted, which was the energy. And so that's a small example, but that was an excruciating situation because people at Campbell's, were really afraid to fail. And when you're running an innovation agenda, we've had to get over that. The other thing is we have a leadership model, and one of the circles in the leadership model was drive organization alignment. Well, that sounds happy. We were spending all day talking to each other and aligning, but we weren't getting anything done. And so we changed that circle to drive organization decision-making. And we had every leader trained on how to drive decision-making, how to set the agenda, who's got the D, who's an advisor, who needs to be informed. And that discipline now has gone like wildfire through our ranks, and people are making more decisions, and we're being able to empower them down in the organization so that we could go faster. And if you hire the right people, they should be able to make the decisions because they're close to the work. And so those are two examples of changes that we've had to make at the grassroots. But I think the one fundamental thing I did was I put consumer first, right smack in the middle of the leadership model, so that people know that the consumer is our boss. I work for the consumer. And so if we get up every day and delight the consumer, and we do everything in our culture to be supportive of that, change will happen, and it'll happen for a good reason.
I would just add to that, I think right on the money, but I would just add to that in the food business, perhaps in every business, in the food business, one certainly needs to be sensitive to the sort of local cultural anthropology of food. It may be that clothing brands and so forth start out with a kind of global, everybody likes jeans, right? But food has a lot of local significance, culture to culture, and having respect, once again, for what you don't know, what you need to learn from an anthropological standpoint, is very important when you're in the food business. And so the sagacity and the insight of our local people in understanding the environment and putting the consumer first. You can commission many, many studies that will help you evaluate how likely you are to succeed in a particular market, in a particular segment, through a particular set of channels with a particular product. You get lots of really good numbers, okay? What you don't necessarily understand from all of that is the relationship of the product and the brand and the people. So respect for what you don't know, especially in the food business, is a very big idea.
Yeah, that's probably good advice in general to even faculty perhaps. So. We have a few hands up. I had UQ and over here. Now let's keep these questions real short, okay? And then we'll see what we can do, okay?
Great, thanks. Hi, my name is Jennifer Kim. I graduated from Columbia College, and I now actually direct a Buddhist center that focuses a lot about ethics and also the interface of life's happiness and the purpose of work. So the question, it's really wonderful to hear about corporate social responsibility and how that's helping the bottom line. I guess my question is regarding your financial stakeholders. How much are they really invested in corporate social responsibility? Do you find that they're very supportive of it? Are there some cases where it's antithetical to corporate social responsibility? And in those cases, how do you navigate?
Well, I think there are those investors out there that are special investors that really look for companies who take a position in social responsibility. And then there are more broadline investors, I guess you call them, that are it's a consideration, but they're about, what's your sales, what's your EBIT, what's your EPS. And so, I think what we've learned is, you've got a spectrum of investors, and we're staying true to our strategy, and our strategy has a integration of good financial performance and good social responsibility. And that's who we are, and that's how we communicate about the company. And so therefore the investors will take away from that what's important to them. I don't know if you have it.
No, I think that sums it up.
But probably it's true that a lot of your people out there meditate a lot on dividends and capital gains. We have two questions. Can I take them together if possible? So maybe you can ask a question and then this one here, okay?
Okay, great, thanks. My name is Lou Blaustein, and I did not go to Columbia, but live right in the neighborhood and feel part of the family and go to a lot of Columbia basketball games. And they were good this year. And I also run a sustainability-focused sales and marketing consulting company trying to help brands communicate their greenness better and marry them up with properties, events that are in essence green. And so I know Mr. Stangas' work well, and he's awesome, and what you guys are doing is really top notch. My question has to do with climate change, specifically the climate change that's already baked in. And how is Campbell's looking at climate change as risk in terms of its short-term effects? If you watch Years of Living Dangerously the other night, you see that, and other things, you see that it's happening now and affecting people and places now and in the future. So my question is about climate change as a reality, as risk, a business risk, and how do you deal with it?
Great question. Hold on, this question here.
Sure. I'm Julia Barmeyer. I'm a second year at the business school. My question deals with, at the beginning you talked about the need to bring the board along with you in your vision for Campbell's. I was wondering if you could drill down a little bit on what tactics have been effective for you in bringing people along with your vision.
Tactics in bringing the board along in your vision for the
I'm going to take your question and you can take the All right, so the tactics of bringing the board along when you're introducing a change agenda starts with, first of all, we choreograph our board meetings. So looking at the amount of time the board is meeting and how many of those sessions we want to devote to strategy discussions and how many to operating plan discussions. I do a CEO overview at every board meeting, which gives them a deep dive into the business at hand today. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm very transparent with the board. And that helps them really grasp where are we today, which then frees us up for the rest of the meeting time for not only the robust committee work that they do and the board resolutions they have to work with, but some real quality time to talk about strategy and where we are in the strategy and the change agenda. I have my management team literally on their feet in front of the board. It's a double purpose. they get to talk about their business, which is really motivating for them and their strategy. Plus, when I talk to the board about talent and succession, they've met the people. So it really helps in both respects. But we have very robust discussions and what I call deep dives into, how's the beverage business doing? How's the soup business doing? And what is the strategy going forward? And then myself and the CFO pull it all together for them, and we approve, not formal approve, but we actually all endorse a 3-year plan. And then year 1 of that 3-year plan becomes the operating plan, which needs to be approved. And so we have a rhythm to this, and I think the most important thing for me is that the board knows that I'm telling them everything, and there's a lot of diverse perspectives on what we should do, but ultimately they know it's management's responsibility to have a strategy and to run the company. And so I find that in that spirit, the challenges and the perspectives are very constructive. And so we've been able to navigate that, pretty well. And when we have a situation where we've communicated and they just don't understand it, I get the feedback after each meeting, and then we go back at it and we just make sure that there's real clarity. It takes a long time, but it's a paradox. I don't have time to explain it, but explaining it saves me time. And so making sure that we're doing that in a robust way has really worked. So you can do the climate.
Well,
We like global cooling in the soup business.
so the fact that what appears to be the fact that the world's climate is changing in many places is a risk at some level for every business, right? The way we have experienced it most directly, and it is a hypothesis that is, above my scientific capability, is, so this year there has been a very severe drought in California. About 95% of our tomato supply comes from California. We also have we are ultimately a business, because we're in the food business, that relies heavily on agriculture, whether it is protein or whether it's, and the protein that we use, in our soups, whether it's chicken or beef or whatever it is, comes from different places. You know that. And we have large biscuit businesses in different parts of the world. We have Pepperidge Farm in Connecticut, and we have the Arnott's business in Australia and many parts of Asia, and those are heavily based on grains and on dairy, right? Because you need butter and eggs to make. So our most direct experience with it is agriculture, and we can't see into the future, but we do take steps that we can to diversify our resources, to protect our sources of supply, and to the extent we can, protect the pricing of our sources of supply. In that respect, I think we are no more nor any less exposed than other companies in our industry. That we did have a first this year, a first in the history of the company in the Midwest, when soup froze in a warehouse.
It was in the trucks.
It was in trucks.
Because they closed the road and we had the trucks ready to go. They were all packed
Never
up.
happened.
They ran to throw it out.
We actually, yeah. But I think that's the honest answer.
Great.
So it can be too cold.
Pardon?
It can be too cold, too.
It can be too cold.
It can be too cold,
Don't
yes.
figure.
It can be too cold.
Thank you so much. Again, it was so wonderful for both of you to come tonight.
Thank you for having me.